Time for the new lecture, and it's going to be about Veresov system. It is a very annoying opening choice by white, especially lately, because with all these guys playing London system and Ginger Jabava system with knight c3 and bishop f4, occasionally white players like to go with even knight c3, bishop g5, which is called Veresov system. It's very annoying for playing. You gotta know certain rules about these positions, and that's why I'm here. So it usually goes with d4, you play knight f6, and they go knight to c3. Here I just have to give you a piece of explanation and to tell you that whenever they go with knight c3, you gotta play d5. Simply, they want to play e4. If they manage to go with e4, you'll be forced to play d6. And in case you play d6, you play Peart's opening. And don't tell me you want to play Peart's opening with the black pieces. Also, for all of us who are not familiar with the main ideas of the Peart's opening, you're just going to be forced into a very, very annoying territory of the Peart's opening, where you actually give your opponent not only a better development and more space, but at the same time, lots of attacking possibilities. And that's why anytime in an Indian system, when you see knight f6, you gotta go with nothing else but d5. So d5. d5 is aimed against e4. And since we're talking about Veresov system, this is not going to be a video about Ginger Jabava. If you want to find about this, go on the channel, find there, I believe there are 2 videos about Jabava system, how to trade it with black pieces, and basically you're going to be able to find it on the channel. Let's go with the bishop g5. Those who play bishop g5, they attempt to take on f6. And since they want to take on f6 and create a broken pawn structure, there are so many possibilities for black here. To be honest with you, I always enjoy the most in the following plan. I always play the most flexible knight bd7. Placing my knight on d7, yes, it does block the light square bishop. But at the same time, I'm just, first of all, creating flexible knights. At the same time, sending message to my opponent, don't you dare to take on f6, because if you take on f6, I'll just recapture by knight and my position is going to be fully playable. And also, in that case, we would win the bishop pair without any serious, even structural consequences. So because of that, you play knight bd7. And there we go. They have the following 4 possibilities. I apologize. Let me just list those possibilities out. Knight f3, e3, queen to d3, and finally the main one, f3. Let's begin with queen to d3. Queen to d3 was played in the famous game between Nakamura and Karyakin. Actually, it was something very important that happened in that game with the queen to d3. And what I insist on when I mention the queen d3 move is that they just want to make what? They would like to go with a long castle. And at the same time, apart from creating a long castle, they would like to break in the center either with f3 followed by e4 or e4 straight away. Also, the queen on d3 just keeps controlling and keeping the white center more solid. Amongst many possibilities, I'm suggesting to immediately challenge our opponents with c5. You know what's the golden rule of these positions? Just like in French, anytime you play c5, you just threaten to take on d4, in which case you would just break the pawn structure in white's position. So after c5, they just have to go with long castle. In my opinion, that's probably the best. I've seen a couple of times in my blitz games, my opponents went for this, and when I recapture by knight, where I'm absolutely happy to win the bishop pair and to keep the very healthy pawn structure. I want to show you two of my blitz games that happened lately. Once on chess.com, another one was on Lead Chess. The guy just went for queen b5. I played bishop d7, and after queen c5, da-da-da-da, e5, and you trap the queen. What a funny way to win the game and to trap the queen of your opponent in just a few moves. Of course, that's not gonna work, and most of these guys just take on c5 because they maybe accepted the fact that they lost the bishop pair, but they just want to get something in return, and that's a pawn. So after we play e6, we want to get the pawn back. e4, you have nothing better but d takes e4. If queen d8, king d8, castles, king c7, your king is safe, and you're just going to collect that pawn on c5. And in case of knight e4, take on d3, take on e4, and play bishop c5. It's a tiny bit better position for black. From strategic point of view, I would just have to ask you, for example, most of you would say, okay, why would we, or why should we be better just because of the bishop pair? No. Okay, it's nice, but it's not, I would say, decisive thing, and thing that just determines this game as our big advantage here. The most important thing here is the pawn majority. And what does it mean? So when you have the pawn majority, and if you manage to start pushing these pawns faster than your opponent, you're just going to be in a better condition during the game. So you want to go king e7 probably. You want to go f6, e5, and start pushing these pawns in the center on the king side, and use 4 against 3 on the king side. So that's the thing, and that's how you should be playing after queen to d3. Once again, after queen to d3, c5, we've seen bishop f6. If early d takes c5, you play this. Of course, harassing queen, that's another drawback of having the queen there. Check. They're about to ask you, would you maybe blunder a piece now? No, you won't. You play knight after d7, and that's what I like about this game. For example, I had a game, couple of bullet games actually, not one, where my opponents went for long castles. For example, they don't want to take the bite and take on d5, and then I just play, after a long castle, a6, kicking the queen away, then f6, kicking the bishop away, and e5. And you know what? It's not about I'm threatening knight to d3 to win the queen. Forget about that. I'm threatening d4 by fork win one of these pieces. Forget about that as well. I'm just having a strong center. And even if I didn't have anything of previously mentioned, I'm just enjoying the strong center, and they're just having problems with the king on c1. One game I had with the knight d5. You kick the queen away as usual. You kick the bishop away. You kick the queen away, and you play h5. Playing h5 is just going after the queen on h4. You'd like to go with g5 afterwards, and black just has a very, very lovely type of the game. And let's get back to that famous game between Karyakin and Nakamura. Karyakin was black, Nakamura white. Karyakin challenged the center, challenged the queen on d3. Nakamura went for long castles. Karyakin played c4. That's a very surprising move here. Usually, and probably the very first reaction on most of us should be, why not c takes d4, grabbing the pawn on d4, breaking the white center, and playing a nice game like this. Well, in this case, it's not gonna work like that, because when you play c4, you're just kicking the queen away with tempo, taking advantage of having that queen on d3. That's an important thing. But more importantly, you're going to be able to organize a very fast attack on the queen side. So queen g3, probably they want to play knight b5 and knight c7. And now Karyakin played queen a5. Beautiful move, which stops knight b5 and which gives you b5, b4, kicking the knight away, taking control and the grip of the e4 square afterwards once you play b4, and probably most important thing, going after the weak king on c1 and the pawn on a2. After e4, Nakamura didn't want to hesitate, went for e4. Karyakin played b5. On e5, he would have gone with b4 and he'd be much better. You can analyze that at home. King b1, d takes e4, bishop f6, g takes, knight e4, bishop e7, knight c5, and after knight c5, d takes, rook c8. Nakamura now was behind with his development, and eventually he lost the game, giving his opponent strong center, bishop pair, and definitely not having pieces around the king on b1 definitely favors black in this position. And according to the engines, black is almost winning in this position. I wouldn't go that far, but for sure, black is just so much better. That's enough with queen to d3. e3. About e3, there is a ex-world junior champion and legendary Serbian GM, good friend of mine, Igor Miladinovic, who likes to do this e3 flexible type of things. The point of e3 is that at some point he just wants to delay his development and decision whether he wants to play f4 at one point or not. After e3, he won so many games with it, and absolutely the best move here for black should be e6. Also, I'm just giving you the approach against this Veresov system with these with this bishop, dark square bishop on diagonal f8, a3. I'm not going to insist on g6 ideas. So after like e6, they go, for example, knight f3. Very interesting would be what to do if your opponent in this position goes with e4 now. It's bad. You just play h6. He can't go back with the bishop because you just played g5. And, of course, you win a pawn. Or d takes e4. That's why they have to give up bishop for the knight. And if they give up bishop for the knight, what do we have? We have a good French with a dark square bishop, with the lack of the dark square bishop in white's position, and we have the bishop pair, and an easy way, if they ever play e5, to go back with the knight on d7, break the pawns, and break the white center with c5, c takes d4, and in a way weaken the pawn on e5, and just let's just say take advantage of the bishop pair and control of the dark squares. And that's how it works, and that's why I believe most of these guys will play knight f3. And in bullet and blitz games you face those kinds of things lots of times, so the following plan is going to be important for you. But let's say you play against the guy who knows some stuff about Dutch reversed, and they go with the f4. They just get a very nice grip on e5, and in the next few moves they would like to develop the light square bishop here, play short castle, and jump with the knight on e5. It's very important to do bishop b4, because bishop b4 pins the knight and gets a very nice outpost e4 as well. So if they have e5, yes, we just go with the bishop b4 for the e4 square. And they go knight f3, we break in the center. I analyzed bishop f6, bishop b5, and castles you just take, and in this position you go after the double pawns. They're just going to jump with this knight on e5. You're gonna afterwards jump with your knight on e4, with the rook on the c file, with this double pawns there, with a pretty useless, I mean, it looks nice, this knight on e5, but it's not doing anything that special. Certainly black should be a little bit better in a game like this, and that's why after a3, e6, I expect of these guys to play knight f3. Also, it can transpose from many different order moves. You play bishop e7, why bishop e7? Because at some point I'd like to unpin myself. I'll show you when. So bishop d3, castles, castle, c5. For white would be way better to have flexible knight on d2 and pawn on c3. And with the knight on c3, c5 really works and does its job, because we have just like a better break of the white's pawn structure. So when you play like c5, they go knight e5. They just jump in the center. They just want to go with f4 as well as queen f3, queen h3. And everything would be so nice and so smooth for white. And I even see and feel this position as a very annoying one if you let them go with this. But you won't let it happen. And just because of that, after knight e5, you should take, and now you understand why do we need our bishop on e7. So we can simply take, go back with the knight, exchange the dark square bishops. If you exchange the dark square bishops and they go with f4, you can break the center and everything's fine because they can't sit and wait. They gotta take, in which case, once you play bishop d7 or k2, e8 and e5, e3 might remain weak, or they just have problems with the center. And if they go back with the bishop, playing like kind of a London and going for queen g4, queen h5 afterwards, you just say, buddy, I'll go with this move. For example, I was just teaching one of my students to play like this with black pieces, and almost the very same day, I played a blitz game against 1IM. The guy probably thought that his position should be great after queen h5. I played g6, queen h6, and I went for that bishop. Point is, I want to take, for that pawn. I want to take on e5 by knight, and if I need, I'm going to defend the knight on e5 with the bishop f6, going back to g7, harassing that queen, I mean kicking it away from the king and defending. I know we're protecting e5. After h4, knight a5, h5, I just played bishop f6. And then he kind of exhausted all his attacking possibilities and ideas here. It really looks a little bit scary at first glance, but I was familiar that this position should absolutely be super solid for black, and I managed to win that game afterwards. After knight bd7, there is a third move. It's knight f3. Knight f3 is very similar to previously seen variation, because if we had previously e3, e6, knight f3, here after knight f3, e6, we won't take a look at e3, but once again, if that happens, you just play bishop e7, short castle, and c5. Problem is what to do when they play e4, which happened to me probably 20 times in my games. And I remember one day, I just decided to take a look, what is the real assessment of this? Because here and there, I keep getting games, and I didn't know, actually, I wasn't sure, was I reacting well? And to be honest with you, in those fast time controls, you just don't have time to even check the variations, not to make, not even to make sure and to say, I'm probably playing this right. Let me just show you, my surprise was big when I realized that after e4, I should play h6, and I always play that. And it's never a problem if they take. Then you win the bishop pair, go back with the knight on d7, or play knight e4 with a good position. But that's not a problem. Problem was bishop h4. The guy was constantly playing bishop h4. And then some games I played g5, captured by pawn on e4. And then I decided to check with the engines. I'm almost winning, believe it or not, when you play g5. And when instead of taking by pawn, where my opponent kept playing knight d2 and I had problems, I have to take by knight. I did it one game, and then when he played knight d2, I said, I'm not supposed to play this one and to defend it, because if I play f5, queen h5 is just going to be lost. No, I was completely wrong. If I play f5, and afterwards I won so many games using this, I'm defending the pawn on e4, I'm up a pawn. Of course, they cannot take on e4, don't worry. So when they give me check, and that looks so scary, you just go king e7. And I gotta put a green color and to circle this king, which means that the king is absolutely safe. Next move will be playing knight f6, harassing the queen, threatening the pawn on d4 as well, and they cannot defend everything at the same time. I won every single game of mine after I learned that I should be defending this, go with this weird, seemingly weird king e7, but basically this is just an easy game afterwards. And I just want to show you one more game. A couple of my opponents in the past tried knight e5, because they just said, okay, if we can play knight e2, then we can go like this. A very important move is, since they threatened to play queen h5, and that could be a very annoying threat because of f7 and development, you just go h5. h5 is not only harassing these bishop, but more importantly, doesn't give them to play queen h5. So after h4, which is practically the only move, g4, we get the space. And I'd like to go with some bishop h6 afterwards. In many of these games, c3, knight takes c5, f4, bishop d6. Don't forget, we're up a pawn. And they just have to face that position, being down a pawn and playing like this. And this is absolutely, absolutely fine for us. And finally, I want to show you the last and probably the most important move in these positions. I know so many guys who learned simply to play Veresov system, and they just know play knight c3, try to do e4. When they play a d5, do bishop g5, and go with f3 and d4. And a majority of your opponents who go for the Veresov system will play f3. And it's very important to know the following line. The key move for black is c6. There are so many moves, so many possibilities, but I don't want to bother you with this one. I want to show you the c6. And now looks like we're not fighting against the most important and most typical e4. By the way, c6 doesn't only defend and protect the pawn on d5, but it also, for example, if they go with the pretty primitive queen d2 and long castle, we just want to go with b5, immediately launching the attack, threatening b4, avoiding e4 afterwards because they will have problems with b4, d takes e4, and giving yourself queen a5 followed by b4 and so on. Because of that, after like e4, which is absolutely the main in these positions, we just have to know what to do and how to defend against it. A good friend of mine, and I played against him more than 1,000 bullet games in the last couple of months, keeps playing this line against me. And somewhere just deep back in my brain, I had this variation, I don't know, like remembered. And at one point, I just pulled it out and I decided to play d takes, f takes, and e5. I have to tell you that ever since I started to play this system, I started to win every single game. So what's the point? e5 is a pretty big move. Surprisingly, d takes e5 is the main line, but I'll show you that one. Before that, knight f3. For example, they don't want to commit themselves. They don't want to lose the tangent in the center, and they play like this. You kick the bishop away. They go with bishop e3. If they go with bishop h4, you just go queen b6. Threatening on b2, threatening on d4. You just take on d4, take on b2, play queen a3, you're up a pawn, and you should be easily a lot better. Once again, I'm insisting on flexible knights. And another thing is if knight f3, h6, and they go back with the bishop here, you go with bishop b4, threatening to take on e4. They gotta go with d takes e5, in which case you play knight g4, and then you can get the pawn back on e5 with tempo, because you're attacking the bishop and want to take on e4. But there is another plan. If they go with queen d3, you just go queen a5, short castle, and then you threaten to take on c3 and on a2. Here, after king b1, you take on c3, b takes knight b6, bishop d2, knight g4, and you're just threatening knight f2 with the fork. c4 happened in the game, harassing this queen, and played queen a4, threatening knight f2, threatening fork, going after the pawn like this, going with e takes d4 afterwards. This is a correspondence game that took place back to 2007, and basically black won soon after. And finally, what's happening when they play that move d takes e5? When they play d takes e5, The key moment of the whole variation is the following one. You just play queen a5. And that's the key concept here against the Veresov system. That's what gives us great game, and that's how I managed to win most of these games. Not most, almost all the games against my friend. Point is that they cannot take on f6 because you take the bishop. And you know what? In a open game where you have the dark square bishop and he doesn't have the dark square bishop, which basically means he's got a problems with the dark squares, in position where the game is just fully open, which favors not only black bishops but also the dark square bishop as well, this is almost winning. On queen d2, you just take by knight. You don't care if they take like this, because once again you end up having the bishop pair and with a fantastic control of the, like dark squares, being happy because you're just enjoying an active and very dangerous game with the bishop pair. So that's the way it is. And finally, if they play bishop d2, you take by knight. They go knight f3, you play bishop g4. You give up bishop, not knight, so you can play bishop c5, and I'll show you a game of mine. A very interesting thing happened here. f4, queen d8. I believe I analyzed this once or so in this very similar game, and after f takes e4, I brought the queen back. Basically, I brought the queen back into the center of events. So when I played it here, f takes, knight g4, I was just completely winning because I was threatening queen h4. So this was a very, very nice thing. On bishop f4, check, bishop g3, bishop f2. Probably that could be easily forgotten. And then you just have knight e3 and you win the game. Finally, after queen a5, my friend kept taking by bishop on f6, but I'm not confused. I don't care. And the point about this one is that on e6, you can easily take, for example, by pawn and get a nice game. Queen h5 doesn't work because of queen on a5. But you also can play knight a5, in which case you take by king. And any queen h5, you go with a king on g7. King is safe, and they're in danger. Although my friend played one game, then he tried another game, and then he gave up when he played e takes f6 against me. Once I played bishop h6 and I won. Another game I played knight f6 and I won. And then I realized something, like just came to me, and I said, oh, but I can play bishop a3. Point is, if you take, I take on c3 and play knight f6, and the mate is on the horizon. So the guy goes with queen c1, knight e5, and we had a game where the guy played rook b1, bishop c5. I'm now taking control of the dark squares and playing bishop e6 because you cannot touch my knight due to bishop f2 discovered check, where I'm gonna win the queen. I just tried to present you the most important ideas against Veresov's system, to do it in a bit exciting and entertaining way in terms of your games, play, and everything else. And hopefully you're gonna enjoy this one and find this video very useful for you in the future. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.